next speaker, who is the last speaker for this session before the thank you. And it's always a great challenge to have the task of finishing off a tremendous marathon of discussion. And so while you speak up, let me just introduce the next speaker. Mr. Gerhard Wilcke, I've said that correctly, as best as I can. He's the Chief Financial Officer at Siemens, and he will be talking about a new style of CFO leadership, raising the company's financial IQ. And just stop filling the forms out for 1 second, and please put your hands together to invite him to the stage.
So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'm the last person delaying you to implement what you have learned in the conference. When you ask me how to raise the company's financial IQ, I can give you the following advice. Employ chartered accountants and make financial performance matter. First advice, hire chartered accountants. I'm not saying this because this conference is sponsored by ICAP. I'm not saying this because I'm a scholar who has analyzed several hundred companies and this is what they have done. And I'm not a chartered accountant myself. I'm saying this because that's what we have done at Siemens Pakistan. When I joined Siemens Pakistan in 2002, the company employed 2 chartered accountants in areas where you always would suspect chartered accountants, i.e. in audit and in accounting. Today, Siemens Pakistan employs 26 chartered accountants. 14 out of these chartered accountants work in line management. This means in finance and business administration of our business units. So, how was this possible? It took a couple of prerequisites to achieve this. First of all, you have to make the move from cost to yield. Chartered accountants are obviously more expensive than people who have not passed these tests. So the usual problem you come across is that somebody says, look, a BCom is actually much cheaper. And I know this. But with the help of the buy-in of the managing director, I was able to convince people that we should look onto the return we would get from a chartered accountant compared to a person who is not a chartered accountant. And I will show you later what the return is. Secondly, and this is very much on the personal level, the person who does this must accept the fact that he is not necessarily the expert in all areas. We have in particular in the old English world, in the pink world, this expectation that the CFO must be the best of all his people, and because he can't possibly be the best, he has to make sure that nobody is better than himself. When it comes to the chartered accountants themselves, it is much easier to get financial analysts, people who, in my perception, fall into the categories of thermometers. A thermometer tells you that the water has 28 degrees or 32 degrees or whatever, and that's fine. That's all what a thermometer is supposed to do. When we look into employing chartered accountants in the line management, we look for people who are interested to influence the numbers, to make a not so good number into an excellent lumber. And this is not everybody's cup of tea. So by employing the relevant person, you have to make sure that you get the right people. The next point of advice was make the financial performance matter. In Siemens Pakistan, we have introduced a system where your total pay follows a 60-40-40 approach, which means out of your total cash, 60% is fixed, 40% is variable, and the variable part can go up to 80%. This means in Siemens Pakistan, people can make more money in their variable part than in their fixed part. Some speakers earlier today said that big bonuses and big incentives are bad for the morale and for the ethics. I personally think that you can have big bonuses and still have a high morale. We introduced the system based on a personal experience I had in the early 70s in Poland. I traveled there, and to my utter surprise, on a Friday afternoon, everybody was at home. And in Poland, Friday is a normal working day. So when I asked one of the people there how this is possible, he simply said, "Look, son, they pretend to pay us and we pretend to work." So in Siemens Pakistan, cash has a real influence on the quality of life in the office, because I apply a concept which I call no money, no honey. If your business unit runs out of cash and your company car is due for replacement, then you better find ways to drive your car a few months longer. Because as long as your business unit doesn't have a positive cash flow, you won't get a new car. Until now, we haven't come across a situation where somebody out of desperation made a serious accident so that it was beyond repair. The availability of cash is part of the incentive scheme, so it has, of course, an influence on the size of your incentive. But to make matters worse, for every month in which your overdues are too high, your incentive payment is delayed by 1 week. Doesn't sound much, but over a 12-month period, this makes 1 quarter. In every month in which you do not achieve your cash targets, guess what happens? Your incentive payment is 1 week late. So in an unlucky situation, you are again looking at another quarter. We couldn't put in more delaying elements because the tax year in Pakistan ends on the 30th of June, and the first time you can get your bonus is anyway in December, so maximum is 6 months. In Pakistan, 6 months is still the closest thing to eternity when it comes to getting hold of the incentive. To make things fair, 80% of the bonus is driven by your own performance. So that people don't suffer from what I call the frying pan syndrome. This means your wife hits you with a frying pan because your incentive is lower than she expected it to be. We translate the monthly accounts, we do a monthly closing into